بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. First of all, I want to begin by showing you my lecture notes. Okay? So this is not really a lecture. And it's really like a fun and beneficial exercise and a powerful da'wah tool. And it's we do it as a group. And it's amazing, like when you organize the information that's in the minds of the audience, you come up with something very structured and very beneficial da'wah tool, inshallah. Okay. And for this to work better, we need to be a little closer to each other, because there's going to be a lot of talking back and forth. So anyone without a back problem, then we'd request you come a little closer. And those who have back problems, they're exempt. You can keep leaning against the wall, inshallah. Or if you'd like, we can pull you a chair, no problem. But you must be over 18 for that. طيب. جزاكم الله خير والله. What we're going to do, inshallah, we're going to do an exercise by which you can prove to any non-Muslim, all right, that the Prophet ﷺ was a genuine prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or you can also use it to prove the existence of Allah Azza wa Jal. I remember many years ago, and by the way, this is when I was young I thought I invented it. Then I discovered that the ulama have been writing about this topic for hundreds of years. So this was many years ago. There was a Muslim man, and he wanted to marry this girl, and she was atheist. He can't marry her. So he said, "Khalas, can you prove to her that Allah exists?" So if someone wants to listen, it's easy to prove that Allah exists. It's not difficult at all. And I always reference Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah said that because Allah Azza wa Jal created us, we're in need of water. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put water in every corner of the globe because we need it for survival. And just like water for the body, we need to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the spirit. And because of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even more so put His signs in everything on earth. So we could see and find an indication to the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if anyone is really willing to listen, it's easy to prove to them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists. We proved to this woman that Allah Azza wa Jal exists only by doing the exercise that we're going to do today. Just by analyzing the life of the Prophet ﷺ, and alhamdulillah, she became Muslim, and now, mashallah, they have 2 children, and still married, still Muslim, alhamdulillah. So, the idea is this, and let me start by saying this. Imagine now a guy walked into this room right now, and he says to us, by the way, I'm a prophet of Allah. Now, we all know there is no prophet coming after Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay? But suppose you didn't have this piece of information. How long would it take you to determine if this guy is speaking the truth or if he's an imposter? How long? 5 minutes, yeah? Or maybe even less than that. صح? You will ask him or him, yeah, certain questions, and you'll be able to determine if this guy is genuine or if he's an imposter who's making it up. For example, you might ask him, okay, you're a prophet of Allah. He'll say, yes. Type, who is the angel that brought you this message? He says, Malik. Says, okay, that's the first X. All the prophets were approached by Jibreel alayhi salam. So the fact that he said Malik, I can already tell that he's not a genuine prophet. Yeah, tell him you'll meet him later, Malik. Right? What if you ask him another question? What is the most important message in your religion? And he says the most important message is that people need to follow me and obey me. Is that an X against him? Yes, because all the prophets came with one most important message: La ilaha illallah. There's only one God worthy of worship. You see? And so you can ask just a few questions and you can see if this guy is a prophet or not. Were you ever a shepherd? He says, no, I work in IT. There's an X. Because all the prophets of Allah were shepherds. So you see where I'm going with this? Alright. So for example, you can even use this measure against, and for example, the Mormons. You're familiar with Mormons. You have Mormons here, right? So if you look at the Mormons, and actually we said this to their missionaries, said, look, what you claim to be a prophet, your prophet doesn't fit the mold of any of the prophets of God before him. His story is that He was 14 years old, and he walks into the woods somewhere in New York or New Jersey, something like that. 14 years old kid walks into the woods, and who does he see? According to them, God the Father and the Son next to each other. They come like this in front of him. Now, you look in the Bible, that doesn't happen. And no kid just gets, a visit by God. And then the angel that came to him wasn't Gibril. His name was Moroni, which tells you what he thinks we are. All right. Thank you. So the point is this. Look, there are two options, and only two options, regarding the Prophet ﷺ. Either he was a genuine prophet sent by Allah, or two, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, he was an impostor who made it up. True or false? Anyone want to argue against that? Because someone might say, well, maybe he genuinely wanted to improve his people, like Confucius, for example. Still, it would mean he's not a genuine prophet from Allah. Either he's got his message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or he is an impostor who made it up for whatever reason. These are the two options. So with a non-Muslim, or with an atheist, or someone who doesn't believe in the Prophet ﷺ, you would sit and say, okay, either he's a genuine prophet, or he was an impostor. These are the two options, correct? It says correct. All right. So then, there are certain things, his teachings, his sayings, his behavior would indicate if he's genuine or if he's an impostor. So first thing, let's examine the climate in which the Prophet ﷺ was sent. This was Arabia 1400 years ago, right? Broken into tribes. These tribes would go to war against each other for decades sometimes. Over what? A horse race, some ridiculous things. And Mecca, as you know, is the center. And because it had all the idols and people, and the Kaaba, and people would come from all over to pay homage to these gods, and that increased trade, and it was a source of income as well. So now if the Quraysh, or if the Arabs would fight for years over horses and ridiculous things, what do you think they will do to a man who is going to pretend to be a prophet and attack their idols and attack their source of income? Probably kill him, right? So, if a man who knows his people is going to pretend to be a prophet, he must have a motive. True? Nothing is done without motive in this world, right? Right? He must have a motive. Why is he going to pretend to be a prophet? Attack the idols. For what? What's he going to get out of it? So the first thing is, you brainstorm with the other person, what are possible motives? And there is no wrong answer now. You write down whatever they say. So, tell me some possible motives. Now I'm going to write them down. What? Naam? Okay, leadership. Okay. Naam? Wealth, for sure, right? Someone else said? Fame, excellent. What else? You can make a long list here. Status. Okay, I'm going to put leadership and status together. And I'm going to put power. Okay, what else? Naam? Aywa, ahsant. Jazakallah khair. Usually we have to wait like 7 minutes before somebody says women. Maybe he did it because he wanted women, right? An imposter who wants women, he pretends to be a prophet. Yes, young man. Money. Excellent. What else? Wallahi, one guy once said to me, maybe he was from outer space. I wrote it down. Another guy said schizophrenic. Possible? Okay, schizophrenic. Naam? He wants to what? To trick people? Okay. So maybe he's just someone who wants to trick people, right? Why would he want to trick people? Any possible... Yeah, maybe just... Yeah, some people are really, really evil, right? They just want to trick everybody, Pranks and what have you. So, he just wants to trick people, Shiraz. Naam? Possessed, right? Possible. Okay, same one. Young man. He wants to change his community, right? Maybe he just genuinely wanted to change the community for the better, right? Excellent. What else? Faddal, ta'ala. Tribal pride. Right? Maybe he wanted to elevate his tribe above all the rest. Sorry, faddal. Okay, so I'm going to put that with leadership, status, power. money, wealth, luxuries. Okay, what else? Anything else? Can you think of anything else?
Could be revenge, like against someone.
Revenge, right? And sometimes the kuffar will say things like, love of warfare. Okay, put it down. Like whatever they say, because you're trying to get rid of any shubahat or shubahat, like misunderstandings, misconceptions in their mind. So whatever they say, write it down. Love of warfare. Anything else? Okay, is that it? Well, we've come up with about 11 so far. Is that good enough? All right. So then what you do is you described it. First of all, there are only two options: either he's genuine or he's an imposter. If somebody walks in through this door right now, either he's genuine or he's an imposter. Two, you describe the area and the environment in which the Prophet ﷺ was sent. Arabia, and this is the situation. He knows if he attacks their idols, they're going to try to kill him, or go to war against him, or try to assassinate him. So then he must have a strong motive to risk his life. And then you write down whatever motives they say, you write it down. And now you go through them and analyze them one by one. All right? And you see. And by the way, just also sometimes this works with confused Muslims. Someone will come, how do we know we have the truth? Okay, sit down. Either he made it up, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or he was a genuine prophet. We do the analysis, we can come with a clear conclusion. Why? Because we know so much about the life of the Prophet ﷺ. We know which side he slept on, the direction in which he combed his hair, how did he put on his clothes, how he washed himself, how he relieved himself. Every intimate detail, we know it. And it's authenticated, and we have the chains of narration. So that means we can go back now and do an analysis of his sayings, his teachings, his actions, everything. But before we start analyzing the motives and seeing if they will hold true or not, what would be certain things that would tell you this is not a genuine prophet? What are certain telltale signs this is not a genuine prophet?
He goes from being a horrible person all of a sudden to being a prophet.
Very nice. Everyone like that? So Shiraz is saying he starts out as a horrible person, and then overnight he's like, righteous. So from horrible to prophet. Has that ever happened before? Prophets were always the best and most noble people, correct? طيب. Ahsant, which is proof he's not a genuine prophet. صح? Ahsant. Yes. MashaAllah, jazakallah khair. No, not being poor and then suddenly being rich, maybe. Not being a prophet. Because most prophets were poor, right? Or a lot of them. Okay. What else? What's an indication that someone is a false prophet? Yes? Bad manners. True? You ever see a prophet with bad manners? Excellent. What are the other things that would tell you from someone's behavior that they're not a genuine prophet? Yes, sir? Strong motive, that's for sure. What did you want to say? So all that kind of bad manners, like being lazy, a coward, right? Doesn't befit a prophet. Shiraz, you want to say something?
There's holes in his story.
Holes in the story, makes sense? Right? You know what I'm saying? Greed, any kind of bad characteristic. How about things like, for example, he will teach something but he won't practice it. That's a sign of someone who's not a genuine prophet. If he's not a genuine prophet, he has to write his own book. قُمِ اللَّيْلَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. Stand the night in prayer except for a little of it. The imposter does what? He'll sleep most of the night except for a little of it. If that. True? So he'll have holes in his story. Then he'll have to write a book. Correct? Because he's an imposter. He'll write his own book. What things in that book would indicate he's an imposter? Naam? Contradictions. So contradictions would indicate he's an imposter. Ahsant. Most of the book will be about him, how great he is, how excellent he is. Yes? The book perhaps may not focus, excellent, on a lot of acts of worship and enjoying and establishing salah. Shiraz.
He'll have hidden
Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that?
Like the Ahmadi, their false prophet, he was a druggie.
Uh-huh.
Or not just, he has some bad characteristics like we all do,
Mm-hmm.
extreme. Like with women he's horrible, or
Right.
he's an alcoholic, or he's a druggie, something really, really extreme.
That's interesting, yeah? And a lot of times it's the case. Even with the Nation of Islam, you know, Elijah, Muhammad, these people, same things. Okay, very good. Naam? For sure, no miracles. And the best he could perform is a magic trick or something like that. No miracles. What else? Fadal.
Probably ask for money or
Uh-huh. So then basically what we're trying to say is the motive will be reflected in his teaching, his book. So for example, he wanted money, his book will say, give your money to the Prophet. Give 50% of your earning to the Prophet. If you wanted women, the book would say, give your women to them. Bring your wife for blessing to the Prophet. Bring your daughters to be blessed by the Prophet. And sorry to say, in one of the Muslim countries, this is happening now. In our times, in our lifetime, people in the small village and ignorant, he'll bring his wife to be blessed by the Shaykh. Shaykh will pick her up in the morning, inshallah. Can you believe this in our lifetime? What else? Shiraz Yahdi Hana? Oh, sorry, man. طيب. Very good. So now we اتفضل. نعم. Okay. Jazakallah khair. So these little deceptive things, all indications. How about this? His book wouldn't have any knowledge of the future, true or false. If he wrote it, there wouldn't be any knowledge of the future in it, right? It would have solutions that don't work, correct? And this is how we eliminate this problem from the community. It doesn't work because he made it up. Fadal. It'll have useless, senseless things like Musaylim al-Kadhab, you know. You know the story. You know Musaylim al-Kadhab, the guy who pretended to be a prophet, and you know the story when he met Amr ibn al-As radiallahu anhu. Amr ibn al-As was a non-Muslim at that time, and so Surah Al-Asr was revealed. So Musaylim al-Kadhab asked, what has been revealed to this prophet? So Amr ibn al-As tells him Surah Al-Asr was revealed to him, and he recites Surah Al-Asr, which is very short. So Musaylim al-Kadhab says, I also have something similar like this has been revealed to me. And he starts to say the dumbest lines you will ever hear about some kind of animal like a hyrax, like a small furry animal, and you know he digs a lot, and it's so dumb. Amr ibn al-As was a non-Muslim at that time. He looked at him and he said, Wallahi, you know that I know that you're a liar. It's clear, yani. This is a non-Muslim. Like it's clear you're lying. Tfaddal. The earth has been... Right. And that's when the Prophet ﷺ responded to him, Salamu ala man taba'a al-huda. And then he tells him from Muhammad Rasulullah to Musaylima al-Kadhab. And the name stuck from there on. And his miracles were ridiculous. And every miracle of the Prophet ﷺ he would try to emulate would just be reversed. You know, when the Prophet ﷺ would put water in his mouth and return it into a well, and then water would just fill up immediately in the well. They would bring Musaylima to a well that has some water in it. He tries the same thing, he does it, and water just goes down. Then the Prophet ﷺ, when he would make dua for someone, you know, we would touch a companion like this and make dua. And then later on in his life, all his hair would become white except where the Prophet ﷺ touched would be black. They would bring him a child or someone who's losing hair, they tell him, he puts his hand, the guy becomes bald. Just everything reversed for him. So it was clear he was an imposter, right? So then another thing maybe that wouldn't be in this book, and again, I don't like to stress this too much, but it has its value, but a lot of times we overestimate it. Science, right? And if an imposter were to write a book 1400 years ago, there wouldn't be much, strong scientific evidence, or miracles, or if you want to call them miracles, in his book, true? He wouldn't have that knowledge, he wouldn't have that information. Excellent. Anyone want to add anything else? What would be an indication? No.
Stated that point because this book has no indication of the future or has no knowledge of science or things that will come about. He's saying the indication of the true religion is that time will expose it.
أيوة أحسنت. Yeah, جزاك الله خير. Right. Yeah, beautiful. And you put it nicely. Time would expose that book. And over time people would look back and say, oh, what is this guy talking about? But if it holds true to the test of time, then we know it must have been from a divine being that had knowledge of the future as well and didn't make mistakes. Right, very nice. So now let's go back to our possible motives. Let's start with the easiest one. So then you would go with the person and say, okay, let's take your motives one by one and see, does this look like an actual motive that an impostor may have had? Was this available in the life of the Prophet ﷺ? Do we see this motive or not? So we start off with, for example, money and luxuries. Now, what do you use as evidence? Give me examples from the life of the Prophet ﷺ to say he wasn't after money or luxury or anything like that. Someone else, someone new. Like someone old. And Hasib. Sorry? Beautiful. Everyone see how that's a fantastic point? When he started, sorry to interrupt you. When he started his da'wah, right? The Quraysh came to him and they wanted him to stop preaching Islam. What did they offer him? If it's money you want, we'll make you the richest amongst us. If it's leadership they want, you want kingship, we'll make you our king. سودناك, we'll make you the guy in charge of us. And if it's women you want, we'll wed you to the most beautiful women. So if he were an impostor doing it for money, what do you think he would have said to this offer? He would have accepted because that's all he wanted. So then that's one clear proof that he couldn't have been someone out for money. Beautiful. What else? Naam? Beautiful. Mush bas he was rich. He was rich to begin with, and then what happened when he became a prophet? Became poor. Are we seeing how this is so clear now? No one wants to become a prophet to make money, and he's already rich, and he becomes poor after becoming a prophet. Doesn't make any sense. Now,
For 13 years, he was the head of the state. Still lived in poverty.
son, he was the head of a state, still lived in poverty. Yani, tens of thousands of gold dinars and dirhams would come into his hands, and he would distribute all of it and go home with absolutely nothing. This many thousand camels, 50,000 goats, sheep, and he would distribute all of it. Just give it off and come back. So much so that the poverty caused him problems with his wives. True? Right? When they wanted an increase in their stipend or in their salary, and this caused the problem. So someone who wanted money, when he gets thousands and hundreds of thousands in his hand, he'd keep most of it. Excellent. What other proof that he wasn't after money? Naam? Afwan?
No inheritance of the prophet. Like
no one inherits him.
Yeah.
Okay.
That means he does not have any.
Ahsant. So, Jazakallah khair, Ustaz Khalid. So at the time of the death of the Prophet ﷺ, there was nothing to inherit from him. There's actually a small debt that was settled. Yeah? So again, you don't see property or anything like that. طيب, how about, okay, Hasib, and then we'll move on.
The food he ate often did have days, just eating days.
Ahsant. Okay, so now this is the narration of Urwa ibn Zubair radiallahu anh, where he asked Aisha radiallahu anha, and she would tell him that for 2 months no fire would be lit in the house of the Prophet ﷺ. They don't light the fire to cook anything. 2 months. So then he would ask her, how would you survive? She said, على الأسودان. Literally it means the two blacks. It refers to dates and water. Because dates, dark in color, but they're usually followed by water. And imagine just living off of dates and water. Can you imagine that right now? We just hear these things and yeah. But imagine now you stop doing. We're so used to meat, and we'll start biting people in the masjid if we don't eat meat for a while like that. So this is again proof. Yes, young man. Okay, very good. So he wouldn't steal or take or assign himself a portion from people's wealth.
The non-Muslims who went against Muhammad, they used to store their wealth and Muhammad.
Beautiful point. Even the non-Muslims who were against him and attacking him, they would still keep their money and wealth with him because he was known as the trustworthy one. How about luxuries? Can you tackle the luxuries specifically? Maybe they tell you maybe he's someone who wanted to live in luxury. Type. Let's examine his life and his teachings. Don't forget the hadith about luxury in the dunya, and tell me then if that is possible or not. Naam. From the what mat? Read mat. Ahsan. So it's saying that the narration when Umar radiallahu anhu enters the house of the Prophet ﷺ, and there were marks on his back from the mat that he was lying on top of, right? And then also the narration, if maybe you're referring to the same one, Bukhari, when he looks and he sees that there's nothing of substance, nothing to fill the eye in the house of the Prophet ﷺ. One pot of a pillow made of stuffed with palm fiber, just like one blanket, which is the bed, and that's just about it. That's it. Naam.
Crown they were making for Abdullah bin Saud. Why did he say finish it, make it for me?
So no doubt, if he wanted that power, the crown, because the Medinians were about to crown someone as their king. When Islam came, that plan was abandoned. So he could have said, continue the crown, put it on this head, right? But what else? Just now focus on the teachings, because remember we said you would see it reflected in the sayings and in the actions. We've now covered a lot of the actions, and we didn't see any luxury. The house of the Prophet, the apartment of Aisha radiallahu anha is described by the historians as 6 feet by 6 feet. How small is that? The walls were made of palm stalks and mud, ceiling, palm leaves, sometimes water would drip in, nothing of substance inside. So this is not someone who wants to live in luxury. But from anything about his teachings, what he would say, and are you saying that someone today, if someone said he's a new prophet, what's your name? Umar, mashallah alayk, you're a smart man, Umar. Okay, any hadith about luxuries and things? And didn't the Prophet always tell us to not want too much of the dunya and the materialism? Fadal. We're forbidden, the Muslim Ummah, to drink from or eat from silver and gold utensils, right? Isn't that proof of leaving the luxuries? Prophet didn't have any gold utensils, forbade people to drink in that. He told people to be in this dunya as a traveler, right? When you're traveling, you only take what you need for the journey, right? And if you imagine you're driving from here to Toronto, and then you see a great sale on furniture, sofas, desks, dining tables. You're driving your car, even if it's $1 each. Are you going to buy anything? You can't. You're on a journey. Where are you going to put this stuff? You only take what you need for the journey. You buy your sandwich, you drink, only what you need for the journey. There's a huge sale on lawnmowers. I don't care. I'm traveling. I only take what I need for the journey. True? He said that's how we should live in this dunya. Take from it what we need for this journey to the akhirah. But we hoard. Right? Anything else? Last thing. Fadal.
Story of that person that came from a tribe and was asking him for some charity, and they told him, you see these between sheep and all between these mountains, it's yours. And he told him, sure, what you doing? Are you laughing at me or something? No, he said, it's all yours. And he went back to his father and said, I came from a man
who gives.
He does not feel poverty.
Aywa, Jameel, beautiful. So that story of the man who came, the Prophet said, everything in this valley of her livestock is yours. And the man said, are you joking? He said, it's yours. And he took it. And he went back to his people and he said, I came from a man who gives as if he doesn't fear poverty. Right. So excellent. So now you see what we're doing, right? So now you can easily convince anybody, atheist or not, okay, that this is not possible, that he pretended to be a prophet because he wanted money. But what if it's just someone who just wanted to be a leader, wanted to have high status, and wanted to have power? What things from his life, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his teachings will prove that that was not the case? Munib. Excellent. He said, "La tutruni, do not overpraise me, as the Christians overpraise the Son of Mary." Yani if he is someone who wanted praise and that would have been the first. It would all be about praising him. But he forbade people from praising him. Excellent. What else? Okay. Oh, beautiful, huh? Sorry, I'll come to you. Just let me tell the story. Yani, it's so beautiful that the Bedouin man comes from the desert. He enters the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. He, no magazines, no cameras. They don't know what the Prophet ﷺ looks like. So he enters a gathering of people sitting on the ground. He has to ask them, which of you is Muhammad ﷺ? Which of you is Muhammad? He couldn't tell. What does that tell you? It tells you the Prophet ﷺ was dressed like everybody else and seated along with everybody else. Now, for most religious, groups and what have you, and temples, you can never be mistaken as who is the big shot. And I always tell people, and you go to some, religious groups, and you find the guy at the door, he's got a hat like this big, right? Then you go inside, there's a guy with a much bigger hat. Then you go inside, there's a guy whose hat is so big, it's about to break his neck. You know this guy is the boss, for sure, right? The architecture of the room tells you who's boss. True? No one ever in the history walked into a king's court and started speaking to the wrong guy. Why? Because the guy on the throne is the king. The guy with the biggest chair, the nicest cloak, the largest scepter, the biggest crown. You know who's the king. Even now, you walk into a board meeting, what have you, you know where the CEO sits. And everyone else has leather chairs. His leather chair has armrests on it. And it's at the head of the table. So, even the structure of the room now tells you who's boss. The way people dress tells you who's boss. The way people sit apart from everyone else tells you who's boss. But Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is sitting just like his companions, dressed as them, not sitting higher than them, not sitting on the throne. So this is not someone who wanted power. He would dress for power. طيب. What else? Munib. He forbade, and not just that, in the hadith he said, whoever would like for people to stand up to him, to greet him, then let him expect his place in the hellfire. Yeah? So he's saying the one who wants people, like when I enter, I want everyone to stand up for me, because I'm so great. This guy, let him expect his seat in the hellfire. So again, it wouldn't be befitting that his actions and his sayings go against the proposed motive here. Alright? Now. Okay, Jazakallah khair. So you went into another point of the manners, but yes, you are correct. He wouldn't be humble in his teaching. Hasib. He said, he was praying to Allah, oh Allah, do not make my grave a place of worship. Now, what if someone argues, but why would it matter to him if he died? Remember, there were a lot of people motivated by having a place in history, right? There are many people who were generous to the Hujjaj and so on, just so that the people would remember their name after that. Excellent. Naam.
This kind of ties into the last question. What would make him known to the false prophet? He didn't declare himself God.
Sorry?
He didn't declare himself God.
Okay. Type. Very good, very good. And actually we're going to come to that when we discuss the Quran. We're coming to that. Very good point. Beautiful. Type. So now you understand. Now you start to see that, you start to give examples of if he was someone who wanted power, just like remember when the Quraysh came, they said, we will make you in charge of us. And he refused. So if he was someone who wanted power and fame and status, all that would be reflected in his sayings and in his teachings and in his life. In his book also, because he would have to write it. So the book would say things like, the Prophet, would he, in the book, in his own book now, this false prophet, would he just be a human being? And Muhammad is but a messenger. Would it talk about him in humble terms? That إِنَّكَ مَيِّتٌ وَإِنَّهُمْ مَيِّتُونَ, you're going to die, they're going to die? Or would it elevate him in higher status? Would he be, as Shiraz said, would he be a god? Or would he be the son of God? Or would he be the right hand of God? Or would he be his servant and his messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So it's proof again. So again, if that was the motive, it would be reflected in his teachings. Hasib? Okay, excellent. So again, someone who wanted power to lift himself and elevate himself in status, he wouldn't highlight his own mistakes. And the Quran will highlight a mistake of the Prophet ﷺ. Yeah, this is a very strong point. Someone's an imposter. He wants to talk about how great he is. And he writes his own book about how great he is, but he keeps writing about some of the mistakes that he has made. And the wrong decision after the Battle of Badr. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala highlighted that mistake. You know, Abasa wa Tawalla. All kinds of things will be mentioned here in the Quran. And it doesn't fit properly. This was an imposter. He wouldn't write about his own mistakes. To totally ignore them. Shiraz.
Why would he teach his own bathroom habits?
Okay. Exactly. Why would he talk about his etiquettes of relieving himself, answering the call of nature? Why would he discuss all these issues? And these are even things that don't come to the mind of an imposter. He wants to focus on his important issues and his motives. But why would someone who's not a genuine prophet of Allah discuss such intimate details of his life? How to make ghusl. An imposter, why does he care how you make ghusl? He doesn't care if you don't shower for 2 years. Sahara. Right. Okay, let's move on from this point. Yeah. So leadership, poverty, status, fame. Let's just put fame in there. Yeah. Okay. Let's just do fame. Something specific about fame. If I want to be famous, most of the Quran will be about him. I mean, you know what I mean. Personally about him, because a lot of the Quran does deal with the things in the life of the Prophet ﷺ, right? But it's not about him personally. If he wanted to be famous, a lot of the Quran would just be speaking about his personal stuff, making him popular. Some interesting things about the Quran is that the name Muhammad appears how many times in the Quran? 4 times. 4 times. I'm quite sure it's 4. طيب, Isa alayhi salam, how many times is his name mentioned in the Quran? I think 25. Zakul khair. Dawud alayhi salam 16. Musa alayhi salam, Naam? 146. Okay. And if you look at the list of most of the prophets, you'll see their name mentioned so many times, but the name Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam only 4 times. Now let me ask you this. Who on earth, as an imposter who wants to write a book to make himself popular, talks more about other people? It's impossible. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Nobody wants to make himself popular. We'll talk about Musa alayhi salam most of the time. And we'll talk about Isa alayhi salam almost 6 times more than he would talk about himself. Doesn't make any sense. So the more you analyze his teachings, life, actions, and you'll see that any of these motives will not fit. So we crossed fame out of the list as well. But what if someone tells you he wanted women? That's why he pretended to be a prophet. And his multiple marriages is proof that he wanted women. How do we tackle the women? No, not like that. Yeah. Naam. I want. Oh, you mean for people, right? For four for men. But what if someone says, well, he wasn't limited by the 4? Did the Quran limit anything for the Prophet ﷺ as far as women? لا يحل لك النساء. Yeah? There's a verse, right, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him it's not permissible for you to marry after this. Right? If this was an impostor who did it for women, then there's no limit. But an impostor who risks his life because of women, he'd only marry 9 women? You think? Okay, let's analyze it. Naam? I don't know. Let's start from the beginning. From the beginning, first marriage, What about the first marriage of the Prophet that doesn't fit the description of a womanizer? Naam. No, you're 100% correct. Most of them were divorced, widowed. But let's start from the first one. We're going to go through all of them, inshallah. Nafis. Okay, you see that? Khadija radiallahu anha was 40, the Prophet was 25. Okay? Now, the womanizer usually will go for the younger woman. He doesn't marry a woman who's 15 years his senior. Now what else about Khadija radiallahu anha? She was
a noble woman.
she was no, بس يعني إنه that doesn't fit إنه he's a womanizer.
And even they were proposing her, like, but she did not accept any. She accepted them because
صدقت. She only accepted the Prophet ﷺ. But she was twice, you said it, but widowed actually. She was twice widowed. يعني she was married to the first husband, he died. Second husband, he died. Prophet ﷺ was the third husband. Now the womanizer, what does he usually do? Typically marry a young virgin. Womanizer. صح ولا? Everyone's embarrassed about the topic? Huh? True or false? Okay. طيب. So now, and she had children and everything. But that was the first marriage. And they remained married for how long? 25 years. So 25 years married, and he only, in the whole 25 years, he's only married to one woman. Womanizer, why one? Yani, you can keep this one for 25 years, but marrying and divorcing, keep marrying and divorcing. And there were many people in Islamic history who loved to marry and divorce a lot. Yani. And how many did they? 60. Yeah? But, so what else? No, the second marriage of the Prophet ﷺ was to Sauda bint Zam'a, right? And the narrations go anywhere from 50, and the highest goes to 65 was her age when she married the Prophet ﷺ. But 50 to 55 is what people accept. So Sauda bint Zam'a radiallahu anha, also she was widowed. Her husband passed away, and she was about 50 or 55 years old. She was not a young woman. And as according to the scholars and the historians, she was the only one not specifically known for her beauty. All right. So now again, does this fit the mold of someone who's a womanizer? No. طيب. After that, it was Aisha radiallahu anha. The marriages of Aisha radiallahu anha and Hafsa, they had other benefits in them as well. They also showed, these marriages showed the statuses of two great men. They showed the status of Abu Bakr and the status of Umar radiallahu anhum. That it established now this also further link between them and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. طيب. Now a number of things about the marriage to Aisha radiallahu anha, kind of like what we discussed when we were doing Tafsir Surah An-Nur. We're saying that people, because now, people until now they don't argue that a woman matures physically at a young age. Yani, by 13 she could be able to actually have children. True or false? I don't think anyone who knows anything about reality denies this fact. A woman by 13 could be able to have children. So she's physically matured. Alright? But she may not be mentally matured. Because now in our society we keep telling young people that they're children. So we even see them as children and they see themselves as children. We can't imagine the idea of marrying a child. طيب. So we already established that she's physically matured. طيب, what if now I find, but we're saying what if now someone can find a woman who is physically matured at a young age and mentally mature at a young age? Now what's the problem? There isn't a problem. But you know what the problem is? The problem is what they refer to as ethnocentrism. It's when a group of people see what they do is right. And any of you travel to a foreign country where you don't speak the language, the people assume you have to speak their language. Yeah? And when you don't speak their language, they get upset. What is this guy? So you go to a country, wherever it is, and they'll just speak to you in their language. You go to China, they'll speak to you in Chinese. You're like, me no speak Chinese, but they'll keep speaking to you in Chinese. Because they... Excellent. So look, even in the supermarket, they'll do that to you. Here, right? And not just the Chinese, but other people as well. And they'll speak to you in their language because you need to speak my language. Why don't you speak my language? It's all about me, me, me. So most cultures see their way is right. So now when people tell you your Prophet married someone who was young, they're just basing it on what their standard is. Our standard is right. And I use my standards to judge nations 1400 years ago. Totally different everything. Different levels of maturity, even different age at which a woman becomes, reaches menses and so on and so forth. But it's just my standard is right, so if what's beyond that or below that is wrong. Okay? So anyway, so the second marriage was to Aisha radiallahu anha. Third, afwan. And the marriages of Aisha and Hafsa, for example, they showed part of the benefit. They showed the place of Abu Bakr and Umar. the marriages of Safiya bint Huyay ibn Akhtab and Juwayri bint al-Harith, for example, there was a da'wah, and Ramla bint Abi Sufyan, Habiba, there was da'wah benefit in it. Because he marries the daughter of the chief or the biggest leader of this tribe or that group. And what that does, it softens the hearts of the followers of that person. You know, just like when Juwayri bint al-Harith, the Prophet ﷺ married her. This was right after a battle, and all her tribe men and members were prisoners of war of the Muslims. When the Prophet ﷺ married her, the Muslims felt strange. Like now, the in-laws of the Prophet ﷺ are prisoners. So they let them all go in huge numbers. This was unheard of for the Arabs. You conquer a group and just let them go immediately, same day. So they start to enter into the religion as well. That's why Aisha radiallahu anha used to say that I don't know of any woman who's more of a blessing to her people than Juwayriyah. So the wedding with Juwayriyah radiallahu anha caused all this. So there's da'wah benefit. Now I'm not saying that's the only reason. There's da'wah benefit as well. But let me tell you something. You'll find Muslim authors now will talk about the Prophet's wives in a derogatory way. Why? Because out of shame from the non-Muslims. They'll tell you things like, none of them were known. Aisha was the only virgin, and none of them, the rest were old, and they were all ugly. Mush ugly. They say they were not known for their beauty. They were all old women. That's not true. It's not true. We don't bend the facts to satisfy someone and use their standards. It's not true. They were very beautiful. When Aisha radiallahu anha saw Juwayriyah bint al-Harith, she said, I immediately didn't want the Prophet to see her. Because now she has status in this group. And she was very beautiful. So, where is this that they were all unattractive and they were all old? No. Actually, 3 of them were under the age of 20. 3 were in their 20s. 3 were in their 30s. Then there was Sauda radiallahu anha in her 50s. Khadija radiallahu anha in her 40s. Who said they were all old and unattractive? It's not true. But you do the proper analysis, you come to the conclusion that this is not someone who is a womanizer. And we can count up to 11 that were married by the Prophet ﷺ. 9 at one point, because Zainab bint Khuzaym radiallahu anha passed away about 2 or 6 months after the death of the Prophet. 2 or 6 months after marrying the Prophet ﷺ. That's why there's very little about her in the history books. So, and Khadija, of course, radiallahu anha, also passed away. So there's 9 at one point was the largest number. An impostor makes up his own religion. Whatever he says, people will follow. Why stop at 9? Just keep going, right? So, anyways, any way you analyze the marriages of the Prophet ﷺ, you come to a clear conclusion. This is not someone doing this for women. Everyone satisfied? We move on. Someone once said to me, and we wrote this down. This was our number 5. He was a schizophrenic. Actually the guy said to me, he was, how much time do we have, by the way? Half an hour? Oh. Some guy said he was a, يسرع كده. What is it? يسرع epileptic. And he gets into these seizures, and when he's out, he hears voices, and when he regains consciousness, he says, this is what has been revealed to me, So now what? Some of these are much easier than others. So this guy, I just asked him his question back. Said, okay, how many epileptics lived and died before the Prophet ﷺ and after the Prophet ﷺ? He said thousands. He said, how many of them came with anything half as good as this? Which epileptic passes out and comes up with a fantastic religion that solves all kinds of problems in society, the relationship between husband and wife and children and this and that, and how to run an Islamic state. All this from passing out from epilepsy. I want to be epileptic, wallah. It's fantastic. I'm going to come up with solutions for problems. It's excellent. So immediately he said, you're right. Schizophrenic, same argument. Schizophrenic, how many schizophrenics lived and died? None of them came with a fantastic religion with no mistakes. Schizophrenia is the best illness to get then.
How many of them had followers?
How many of them had followers? And who follows a schizophrenic? Who follows an epileptic? Every time the boss is on the floor wriggling, the army is coming. 'Akhi, get up. Doesn't make sense. Huh? 'Cause 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 'c Someone just possessed. How many people have been possessed? When is the last time a possessed guy came up with fantastic things, a fantastic book like the Quran, no mistakes in it? Doesn't make sense. So you cross that out. All right. What if he's someone who tricked his people for fun? Yani like we were saying, would you put everything on the list? Again, someone like that, it would be clear. Yani, what do you think are the characteristics and the personality of someone who just wants to go through all this just to trick people? No doubt, is he dishonest? No doubt. Someone who goes through all this and wages wars just because he wants to trick people, he's a dishonest guy, for sure. And he wouldn't have been called al-Amin even before prophethood, correct? So, I don't think we need to spend too much time on that, right? If he was someone who just had tribal pride, what do you think? He just wanted Banu Hashim to be higher than everybody else. No. So Brother Munib is quoting verses that's saying that we have created you from a male and female, and we have made you into tribes and nations so that you may know one another. Yeah? And the Prophet ﷺ then is the one who preached that no one's better than anyone based on lineage or anything except through taqwa. Right? So how many times did he speak against this kind of thing? How many times did he tell, when the Aus and Khazraj were about to fight, he said, not, or call each other's tribes, he said, دعوها فإنها منتنة. He said, leave this kind of call because it's منتنة, wretched, has this horrible stench to it. Yeah? This is not someone who is promoting tribalism. Hasib. Hold on. Ya salam alaykum. Genius. Huh? Beautiful. Hasib said he fought against his own tribe. Beautiful or what? How would someone who is about tribalism, wants to elevate his tribe, fight against his own tribe? Ahsan. There were Banu Hashim in the army of Badr and so on and so forth. But very good. What if he's just someone who loved warfare? This is very easy also. Someone who loved warfare. Now, if he was someone who loved war, he'd just be the aggressor all the time. Always good going out to attack people, right? If he loved warfare. I had another point about that. What else about if he loved warfare? Why sign the Treaty of Hudaybiyah? Like, listen, I'm a prophet of war only. I love warfare. What else? We had only two left, and one was, I just wrote down, I don't remember really, it says revenge here. Maybe someone who wanted revenge. Maybe revenge from a group or tribe or someone, right? And again, it doesn't really hold water. Ahsan.
All the tribes came against him. He was holding the truth.
Jazakallah khair. If you're someone who wanted revenge from one tribe, why is he fighting every tribe? This is someone who hates all tribes. You know what? This is a plan. I'm going to pretend to be a prophet, and we're going to go to work against everybody. Doesn't even make sense. So again, it can't be revenge. And then the Quran would all be about revenge. It would all be about revenge. After the Battle of Uhud, when they did the tamthil, which is when they disfigured the deceased, the dead Muslims, the Prophet ﷺ said, I'm going to do some tamthil on their dead, the next battle, the likes of which has never been seen. And Allah revealed verses saying, no, it's not the situation, it's not your job. Fadal, I'll come to you. After the visit to Ta'if, he was told, he was visited by the angel controlling these mountains. He said, if you like, I'll crush these two people between the mountains. Any one of us would be like, you know what? Do it twice, please. But he said no. Proof he wasn't after revenge. Yes. Naam? Allah. Fatah Makkah. Prophet ﷺ enters with his head lowered so low, about to touch the saddle of his riding animal. You know Sa'd ibn Ubadah, when he was given the standard, he said, Al-yawm yawmul malhama. Today is the day of malhama, like bloodshed or battle. And Allah today will humiliate the Quraysh. Guess what the Prophet ﷺ did? Took the standard from him. And he gave it to, because it's beautiful. Who did he give it to? No. When he took the standard from Sa'd ibn Ubadah, he gave it to Qais, the son of Sa'd ibn Ubadah. See how beautiful it is? Still kept it with the family. It wasn't it wasn't like and his father had the wrong idea, but he didn't want to humiliate him too much. He gave it to his son. Beautiful or not? Beautiful. تفضل. جزاك الله خير. أحسنت. طيب. So then revenge out of it. Totally out of the question. Yeah. Someone who just wanted to change his community. Umar. If they say he was someone who wanted to change his community, that's why he pretended to be a prophet. What from his teachings and life will prove that was not the case? Slowly change what? Okay, so you're saying that he would make his changes gradually? Okay, طيب, جزاك الله خير. طيب, what else? What's proof that this isn't someone who just was out to change? نعم, تفضل. Okay. طيب, what else? Someone new? What's the proof that he wasn't? طيب, okay, very simply, and if he was someone who pretended and faked a prophecy and went through all these battles just to change his community, طيب, and this would have to be someone good. Why talk about jinn, and why even talk about relieving yourself? He wants to change how his community relieves themselves, يعني? Why go into these details? Everyone understand this point or not? Yes? It doesn't make sense to go into all this talking about jinn and all kinds of and describing the health of hellfire and paradise in detail and going into all this and talking about how to relieve yourself, how to make wudu. He wants to change his community. Maybe he wants to remove certain vices. Yani. He wants to remove lying and cheating and stealing. Why go into all kinds of other things?
He will concentrate about dunya, not hereafter life.
Exactly. Jazakallah khair. Very nice. But most likely his concentration will be in changing things in this dunya. I mean, probably wouldn't be too much mention of the afterlife. So now we just covered all the motives that we have mentioned, we have put together. So you understand the idea now, yeah? Number one, you establish that there are only two options. Either he's genuine, either he's false. We can know from his teachings, sayings, writings, actions, yani writings of course in that case, if he was genuine or not, because we can analyze them. We have a lot of detail about his life, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Two, you describe Arabia, and it's a tough situation. Someone's going to attack their idols. They're going to try to kill him, assassinate him, fight against him. He must have a strong motive. What do you think the motives are? List them down, then go through them one by one, proving how they were not a possible motive in the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that means you're left with one thing, that he was a genuine prophet of Allah, right? But again, we're saying that his book, if it's now an impostor who wrote this book, the Quran, 1400 years ago, certain things would tell us that it's a book written by a human being, not a book from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We said it wouldn't have any miracles in it, and the Prophet wouldn't have been able to perform any miracles either, like the Prophet, the splitting of the moon, trees talking, all kinds of things, miracles in the life of the Prophet. He wouldn't be able to perform them if he were an impostor. For example, if the Prophet wrote the Quran, he wouldn't be able to mention things about the future in the Quran. But the Quran has things in the future. Give us some clear ones. Fadda. Naam? Aywa, Surah Al-Rum. Everyone know the story, right? When the Persians and the Romans had a great battle, and the Muslims were cheering for the Romans. Why? Because they were Ahl Kitab and they believed in the same God. And the Persians were Magians, right? So when the Rome were defeated, the Muslims were saddened, and the Kuffar were happy about that, and they were teasing the Muslims. And then Allah Azza wa Jal revealed غُلِبَتُ الرُّوم, that the Rome have been defeated, وَهُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ غَلَبِهِمْ سَيَغْلِبُونَ. And they, after this defeat, in an odd number of years, في بضع سنين, in an odd number of years, يعني 7 or 9 or so, will again defeat the Persians for this, in return. So this was something in the future, and it actually happened after how long? 9 years. لا بضع يعني odd number 9 صح? In 9 years exactly, the Romans and the Persians had another battle, and this time the Rome is not really Romans. Rome was used to refer to the Europeans in general. So Rome defeated the Persians, No man could have known this. The verse was revealed 9 years before the battle. Who even knew there was going to be a rematch? Only Allah Azza wa Jal. But what else is clear about the future in the Quran? Naam. Yes, sir. Okay, that's a hadith though. Yeah, ahsan. But it's also true. Because in a hadith, yeah, all of the signs of the Day of Judgment, people competing, the Bedouins competing in tall buildings and things of that sort. So these are, again, this is knowledge of the future that the Prophet wouldn't have known, and that's very true. However, we're only focusing on the Quran so far. What's future in the Quran? Surah Al... Which part of it? طيب what if someone argues with you يعني صحيح يأجوج المأجوج ها ممكن واحد يقول لك طبعا يمكن ما حيطلعوا أصلا بس في ناس يقول لك إنه طلعوا بس دول مجانين يعني ما قرأوا الأحاديث ويصور لك the barrier يقول لك هذا came from here أيوة أحسنت جزاك الله خير أيوة جزاك الله خير سورة النصر people Surah Al-Nasr was revealed when? It's really unbelievable. It was revealed as the Prophet was coming back from signing the treaty. It was after the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, where the stipulations of the treaty were oppressive and against the Muslims. It seemed like this is a time of defeat. Here comes the short surah saying, when you see people entering into the religion of Allah in crowds, when the victory of Allah and the help of Allah comes, at this time, only Allah can say something like that. But what else? One more thing maybe. It's quite clear. Aywa Surah Al-Masad. Is that what you were going to say? Aywa Surah Al-Masad. Ahsant. Tabbat yada abi lahabin wa tab. This was revealed when? In Mecca. Right? And it was saying that Abu Lahab, he will be in the hellfire. And his wife will be throwing and fueling that fire for him in the hellfire. But Abu Sufyan was alive at the time. He was an enemy of Islam. Right? And he didn't become Muslim then. Nor after the Battle of Badr, nor Uhud, nor Al-Ahzab, not even at the time of Tabuk. When does he become Muslim? The eve of the conquering of Mecca. Years later. Imagine the Quran said, Abu Sufyan will be in the hellfire, then he becomes a good Muslim. It will be proof that, okay, you don't know knowledge of the future. Yani Abu Jahl could have done one simple thing, Abu Lahab, afwan. He could have done a simple thing to disprove the Quran. What? Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. There you go. Becomes a good Muslim, goes out to jihad, he does all the things that the Prophet ﷺ. Then what? But Allah Azza wa Jal says he will be, which is proof that Allah knows he's going to die upon kufr, and he died upon kufr. There were other leaders didn't die upon kufr; they entered into Islam. So this is clear knowledge of the future. طيب. Just because of time, I guess it's almost 10 minutes, huh? We said most of the book would have been about him if he were an imposter. There wouldn't be any knowledge of the future if you were an imposter. There would be many contradictions in the book if it was written by a man. There would be a lot of, it would have a lot of proposed solutions for things, but they wouldn't work. There would be a failure. There would be also, the science, like I said, it has its value, but let's not overrate it. There wouldn't be all this scientific facts that are in the Quran. They couldn't have been known. Some of them were discovered in 1970s and stuff. It's impossible without the necessary equipment that someone would have known this 1400 years ago. True? Fadlan. Naam. The growth of the fetus in the womb, some things about plate tectonics, some things about cloud formation, oceanography, all kinds of things that couldn't have been known to someone that long ago. I'm just saying, when you use science, just be a little careful, because not all science is science. So a lot of things are presented to you as science, and they're not all science. And sometimes there are different conflicting views, so you might show it to a non-Muslim. So you can pick some clear things, right? I'll share one with you that I like very much. In Surah Al-Nahl, of the bee, it was named so because Allah Azza wa Jal speaks about the bees in one of the verses. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes that the honey, it's a liquid of different colors and in which there is benefit for people. Now this information was old. For thousands of years people knew that there was medicinal and good value to honey, right? But Allah Azza wa Jal, the interesting thing, mentions the bee in the feminine form. mentions the bee in the يخرج من بطونها, right? He's mentioning the bee in the feminine form, and guess what? All worker bees are the females, and the males are like the drones and stuff. They don't do honey. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the female specifically, which is interesting. But there's something greater than that. Allah Azza wa Jalla says يخرج من بطونها, coming out of their bellies is a liquid in which of different colors and in which there is a benefit. Coming out of their bellies. What's so great about that? That's where honey comes from. The bees, they travel to thousands and thousands of flowers. They suck the nectar and they swallow it in their stomach. Then they come, and I know this isn't attractive, then they regurgitate it. They vomit out this nectar and they dry it out with their wings. It becomes honey. Who could have known this? Who could have known this 1400 years ago? Yani, it's impossible. When you add all the different fields of sciences mentioned in the Quran, because someone might be argumentative and tell you, no, he just studied bees, he loved bees, and he discovered this. Okay, he had time to discover this about bees, and this about the ocean, and this about embryology. You know, when you look at any quote-unquote great man in history, for example, not great man, but even inventors, scientists, Thomas Edison, for example, invented over 200 things. But all of them, for the most part, dealt with electricity and this type of field. Da Vinci, for example, he had interest in physics. He had interest in the biology. He would do some drawings of the human organs and things. But in the end, it's limited to 2 or 3 or the most 4 different fields of science. You list all the fields in the Quran, it's impossible one man could have excelled so much in all these different fields. You know, I'll tell you something. There was one time, I did this exercise with a co-worker. I said, okay, we just listed all the skills the Prophet ﷺ had. You know, from his counseling skills were superb. Raising children, superb. Dealing with the spouse, superb. Military tactics, superb. Every skill the Prophet ﷺ had, just list them. Then I told the guy, what do you think? You think this is just one guy who had the time in one lifespan to know all this? Or do you think he was just probably a genuine prophet of Allah? So he tried to come up with something. He said, I think he was the reincarnation of all great men in history in one man. I said, tell me honestly now. What do you think is more probable? That he was the reincarnation of all the great, or that he was just a genuine prophet of Allah? He lowered his head. He's probably a genuine prophet of Allah. It's the only solution you can come up with. Conclusion, طيب. And we said, if he had horrible akhlaq, wouldn't fit that he's a prophet. If he was, poor and then became rich after prophethood, it wouldn't fit the mark of a genuine prophet. If he had bad manners, he was lazy, or he was a coward. Now, you know what it means, coward, yeah? Doesn't mean that he got scared at one point, because a lot of the prophets of Allah got scared. That's not what a coward is. To get scared, the courageous person gets scared, but he doesn't act on his fear. That's all. So, prophets of Allah got scared. Musa a.s. got scared and ran from the magic or the sorcery or when he threw the staff, sorry. But it doesn't mean he was a coward. And then, of course, we said there would be holes in the story, discrepancies, inconsistencies, contradictions, differences between what he would practice and what he would preach. And so, you can only come to one clear conclusion, that he was a genuine prophet of Allah. And most people, when you do this exercise with them, they conclude that he was a genuine prophet of Allah. And either they accept Islam or they actually now know the truth and refuse to follow it. So anyways, I would really love to hear some stories. Enjoy this. All you need is a blank sheet of paper and a pen and a kafir. And just go through it, okay? I'm going to conclude with one argument that I mentioned many years ago one time, and one of the scholars said, don't mention it, because not many people say it. And subhanAllah, last weekend in Toronto, there was a non-Muslim at the Journey of Faith conference, and he was saying it, subhanAllah. He was saying, this man, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, never existed. People just made him up in the books over years. Yeah? Why? Look at his evidence. And this is proof that he has no brains. His evidence is that we don't have him mentioned in our books. طيب. And I actually remember talking to my history professor about this argument one time. and he was teaching African history. Not half of it. All of it is not in the Western book. So something doesn't exist until it's in your books. What did I say earlier? Ethnocentrism. It's all about us. If we don't know you, you're not there. That's why Columbus discovered America. طيب يعني when he landed, it showed up. There were people living there and everything. But he discovered it because the world to them is them. That's the world. Hasib. أيوة. نعم.
Out of the 100 greatest men ever on the earth, he listed Muhammad as the first one. So basically, he said that it's not in their book. It is in their book.
أيوة.
He doesn't know it.
Okay.
Not as prophet, but as the existence of Prophet.
It's true. يعني the 100 is more of a contemporary book, but يعني since if something doesn't exist in your history books, that means it doesn't exist at all. يعني you look at, for example, a lot of the history that was happening in China is never mentioned in any of the Eastern books. But then how about we reverse it? طيب, none of your guys are in our books, huh? True or false? يعني you could tell us, a European will tell me your prophet didn't exist because we don't have him in our history. Okay, none of your people exist. King Edward didn't exist. Charlemagne didn't exist. Napoleon Bonaparte didn't exist. Nobody existed. Because none of them were in our books. Yani since when does it work like that? طيب, I know it's about time. I had a lot of fun. Jazakumullah khairan. You guys were excellent. Thanks for all your input. Wallahi, just try it. They have no escape. Just try it. Alright? No? طيب, barakallahu feekum. Sallallahu mubarak ala Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. There's 2 minutes, right? Very quickly. We have